You don't need a $1,000 scope to ethically hunt deer, but you might need more than $150. Today we're going to break down what you're really paying for and what actually matters in the field. So buckle up. Welcome to another thrilling episode of LocaCarnivore. Glad you could join us today. Yeah, we're talking about scopes and how much you should spend on a scope. And there's a lot of confusion out there. Let's get one thing straight right off the bat. We're not here to sell you gear today. We're just here to help you hunt better and to shoot better, without wasting a lot of money, hopefully. Now, the question is, how much should you spend on a scope? And there's a lot of, well, frankly, there's just a lot of fluff out there. There's a lot of marketing hype and stuff. Everybody wants to sell you something, so they're going to tell you why their stuff is the best and why you need to spend what they're asking for. The old rule of thumb has been, you should spend twice on the optic what you spent on the rifle. Now, when guns were a few $100s a pop, and scopes were maybe, the Highline stuff was maybe $500, $600, $700, $800 on the upside, that made some sense. But now, let's face it, a decent gun is going to set you back $600 to $1,500, and that's not getting into the semi-custom or the premium offerings or even a custom gun. So that means you would have to spend, what, $2,000, $3,000 on a scope, on an optic for this thing? That's a lot of cash. I don't know about you, but that's a lot for me, and I think it would probably be for a lot for most of the people out there. To be honest with you, I would say 50% of the hunters I know, they're on pretty tight budgets, and so they need to get this right the first time. You can't just be spending money and plopping a scope on here and plopping a scope on there until you find the right one. In this video, we're going to break this thing down into several segments. And it's all going to be based on price range. So the first segment is going to be about $100, $150 to just under $300. The second segment will be in that $300 to $500 range. And then we're going to talk about $500 or over $500 to $1,000. We're not going to get into the super high-end stuff. I mean, it's out there, and that's a subject for another video because it's a whole different world in my opinion. At the end of the video, I'm going to give you my recommendation for what the average hunter absolutely should have as a bare minimum for a scope, and roughly what they ought to spend on it. So stick with us all the way through the end, okay? Well, the really big question that I get asked a lot is, what are you really paying for when you put your money on the scope? There's three things that you're paying for when you buy a scope, and where the money goes into the scope. The first is the glass, and the second would be the guts of the scope, the mechanical guts back in the turrets and everything. And that's got the springs and all the stuff that holds the reticle in place and lets you adjust it to zero it in and all that sort of stuff. And then third, I would say you're also paying for things like warranty, customer support, and then of course you're also, the other part of the money, and this is kind of like the mechanicals, but it's a little different, and that's the scope body itself, the material it's made out of, how precisely it's machined and engineered, and the quality control that goes into that. And then of course, is it pressurized, fog resistant, etc., etc. So we're going to show you what each price category gets you with those different parts of the scope, what level of quality you're either getting or giving up, depending on how much you're going to spend. So let's get going, shall we? In fact, by the way, give us a big like on the video. Hit that thumbs up for us. It helps us so much. We want you on the LocaCarnivore team, so please subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of our terrific videos in the future. Now, the first category, I call this the budget, the super low budget, the bargain basement, quite frankly, or the entry-level scope. And I kind of use entry level with some hesitation because frankly, if you're getting into this, you should be getting in a little bit up the food chain and not down in the bargain basement. But let's explore that. And yeah, I said about $100, $150 to just shy of $300. Let's just cap that at about $250, $275, somewhere right in there. Because things do change at the $300 mark, as we will see, so stick with us on that. Now in that bargain basement category, that $100, $150 to about $250, $275, what are you getting? Well, you're getting a scope, and it has two pieces of glass at either end, and it's got some sort of mechanism to hold the reticle in place and to adjust it for zero, and that's pretty much what you get. The material that the tubes are made out of is going to be less expensive alloys, and it's also going to be thinner wall sections, things like that. So yeah, they might be very light, but they're not necessarily very robust. And if you get a scope body that's too cheap, basically, it's going to be weak, and it's going to have a tendency to bend or to distort, either with temperature changes, or maybe you get the torque wrong initially when you're setting up your rings and on the scope when you're mounting it, or you just make a small mistake or it gets bumped in the field. It could get damaged a lot easier than a more robustly built scope body. So you're getting that, first of all, you're giving that up. You're giving up robustness and solid construction in favor of low price and lightweight. Now the glass on this stuff is going to be very rudimentary. It's going to be just enough to magnify it, and if you look through it, it's going to be kind of hazy a little bit. You might have a lot of fisheye to it. There might be a lot of distortion, waviness to it. You can just see if you pick up a cheap scope and a really expensive scope and you go, back and forth, you will see the major difference in that glass. Now the other thing you're going to find is this glass is not going to be very sophisticated as far as its coatings, treatments, and stuff like that. So these scopes are going to be really limited on low light usage. And where do we do most of our hunting? Well, usually the first hour after first legal light and the last hour of the day right before the end of last legal light. That's where most game animals are taken. That's where we do most of the shooting. So it's going to make it more difficult for you to pick out that animal with the scope and to see it clearly and make a clear, proper, ethical shot on that critter. Now the other thing, let's talk about the reticle, and that's the crosshairs is a reticle. The reticle in these things is going to be very basic. It might just be a simple crosshair, just two relatively thick wires or two really super thin wires. You might get a duplex reticle, and that's where the wires at the outside are kind of thick, and then you get these narrow wires to the inside. That's called a duplex reticle, which is supposed to help you both in close-in rapid firing shots, quick up to the shoulder snapshots, and then also for more precise longer shots. It's actually not a bad reticle design, frankly. Not very sophisticated, but if you know how to use it, it works pretty well. In this price range, the guts are going to be as cheap as they can possibly get away with. That means these things aren't going to be very resistant to recoil. If you're thinking of mounting this on a 338 Lapua, probably a bad choice. Anything that's going to give substantial recoil, not a good idea. If it's on something that's like a low recoiling gun, like a 243 or a 6.5 Creedmoor, something like that, yeah, it'll last for a while. The other thing is that the adjustments aren't going to be terribly precise. So if you're trying to use two different loads with the same scope and then go off a dope chart and then re-zero, once you've got it all figured out, setting it back to the other load or something like that, you might not get back to the exact same spot. And I've noticed this with lower end scopes. When you try to do that, they don't come back to exactly where they started because there's a little bit of slop. Well, there's a lot of slop in the guts there. You'll also feel that the turrets, when you take the caps off, and they're all going to be capped, you're not going to have any of these dial-a-prayer adjustment, precision wheels to, dial up and down for elevation, for bullet drop, and dial for wind correction, all that. That's not going to happen. Once you set this thing to zero, that's going to be it. If you want to change that, you got to unscrew the cap, take out your screwdriver or a coin or whatever, and wrangle the thing around. And the other thing you're going to find is the adjustment range in these scopes is going to be very limited. So you might run out of adjustment range. Another big problem with these scopes is the scale of adjustment. So you'll look at that turret, at that little wheel there, and it'll just either say like half MOA or 1/4 MOA or 1/4 inch or ½ inch or whatever. A lot of these scopes are set up for what would be called half MOA or ½ inch. In other words, each click, if you will, and they generally don't have very precise clicks. Sometimes there's hardly anything in there. It's just kind of a free spooling thing, and maybe it's going to hold in place, maybe it won't. But what that refers to is how much movement each click is going to give you at 100 yards. So if you move the thing one click, it'll move it like a ½ inch up or down, or a 1/4 inch up or down, whatever the case may be. A lot of these low-end scopes are ½ inch, so that doesn't give you as precise a dial-in for your zero. You're going to have to kind of put some fudge factor in it. So we're going to see later in our use case analysis how that could or could not affect you. So what happens when you move up a little bit? What happens when you can spend $300 to $500? Well, your world improves quite a bit. And another thing that will help you improve our world here at the LocaCarnivore is if you would help us at our Patreon. I'll put the link down in the description. There's a lot of groovy stuff you will get by being a Patreon member of the LocaCarnivore, and the details are over on the Patreon. The other thing you could do for us is go visit our website, LocaCarnivore.com. We have some terrific deep dive articles over there, and stuff that we just don't have the time to do on the video format here on the YouTube channel. And you're going to find a lot of really nice stuff over there. Also, while you're at the website, don't forget to go up to the top of the screen, hit the little store tab, and then you can get access to all of our groovy LocaCarnivore merchandise, which helps you look really spiffy and helps the channel out as well. Now, mid-range, this is not really mid-range scope, I would say, but it's the next step up. This is what I consider to be proper entry-level scopes, is that $300 to $500 range. And things get a lot better, a lot quicker. First of all, the construction of the scope gets a lot better. You're going to get better tube quality, better alloys in the tube body and that sort of stuff. It's going to be thicker wall sections, etc. The weight might go up a smidge, but you're definitely going to get an increase in durability and its ability to take a bump or two in the field, that sort of thing. I mean, stuff happens, let's face it. So you want something that's going to hold together. Also, generally, the warranties are going to get a lot better. But if you want something that's halfway decent, $300 to $500. Now you're going to get coated optics generally, much better light transmission, the fidelity of the optics as far as, there's going to be a lot less, waviness to it, fisheye, a lot cleaner image. And I find that generally these scopes have a good enough light gathering capability to be quite usable in low light conditions. Are they spectacular? No, but they are quite usable. Now the guts are going to get a lot better on these things. The mechanical stuff, generally it's going to be always 1/4 inch or 1/4 MOA adjustments, or 1/10 of milliradian, whatever it's going to be, depending on what reticle type you decide on and what's offered. But it's going to be a lot more precise as far as zeroing the scope, and they are more robust inside. The springs and the material and all that they use, much better. And it's going to hold up. If you got something that, if you're going to put a scope on like a Magnum, like a 300 Win Mag or a 375 H&H or something like that, you need to be in this range at a minimum, to be honest with you. And most of these scopes will generally hold up over, average shooting from a, hunter type. Now, if you're doing a lot of precision shooting and it's a heavy recoiling gun, like that 338 Lapua I mentioned earlier, it's going to be, these scopes probably won't hold up over the long term. Or maybe it's not as well as you would like. Let's put it that way. There's going to be a life cycle limit to them. Also, you're going to generally get a greater range of choices, both as reticles. You can get bullet drop reticles, bullet drop compensating reticles, a BDC. You need to know what you're getting and follow the instructions very carefully. Understand those. It's not just something that you just put the dot on and it works automatically. Also, there's going to get to be more electronics into these level of scopes. You might find some illuminated reticles, at least at the upper end, like the 500 range or something, which I cannot stress enough the value of an illuminated reticle if it's legal where you are hunting. And it's fantastic. And that will do more than probably super expensive glass, in my opinion, to help you hunt in low light, because you will be able to see that reticle and really line that up on that. Let's face it, game animals are not glow-in-the-dark type things. They're not bright colors. So the contrast of a black wired reticle against that dark-bodied animal, you can see where you get trouble, even if you have high-quality glass. But the illumination, oh, that's a whole different world. And if you can get some illumination, I would say definitely go for it. All right, you ready to spend a little money? Okay, it's time to pony up. $500 to $1,000. What's that going to get you? Well, you're going to get a darn good scope for that money. You really are. Just about anybody that's making a scope in this price range is going to have a really good scope for you. And it's going to be, the mechanics are going to be good. The glass is going to be quite good. Usually going to get into what's called HD glass or high definition glass. Heavy duty, I suppose, but high definition glass. And you're going to get really good light transmission. Is it absolutely the ultimate in light transmission? No. And you might still find just a touch of distortion, maybe right around the edges or something. The other thing you're going to get in this price range is most of the time you're going to have the edge of the glass lens is actually coated and more or less painted, if you will. And that does a lot for helping reduce all that kind of like halo glow and stuff and that glare. and everything. So if you can get the edge-coated optics, and if you can find that in the midline scope, midline price range, that 300 to 500, that would be really good. And you're going to start seeing that in some scopes at that lower price range. But once you get into the $500,000, almost everything's got the edges coated and everything, so that's going to really improve things. You're going to get like sunshades that'll come with the scope, or at least the scope around the objective bell will be threaded so you can put a sunshade on it, and those are really helpful, trust me, really helpful. Going to be really good. You're going to get more adjustment and easier adjustments, like if the power rings are going to move smoother, they're going to be more precise, and then of course the guts of the scope are going to be outstanding. You're going to get really high quality internals on these things. They're going to hold up. If you're going to put it on a heavy kicking lightweight Magnum like a mountain rifle that's chambered in 7 PRC or something like that, that's going to buck a bit, this is the price range you need to be at a minimum, in my opinion. This will give you a robust scope that will hold up over time. And it's going to be able to probably put up with a knock or two in the field much better than the lower end scopes. I got to take a quick minute out from the video just to remind you need to share this video. And there's a simple reason why. And that is because YouTube is trying very hard these days to roundabout, by hook and by crook, get gun and hunting content off the platform. And one of the ways that you can help prevent that, so that you can ensure that you're going to have gun and hunting content on YouTube, is sharing this video and the videos of all the other content creators in this space that you watch. And please do that. It is just absolutely vital if you want to continue to see this stuff on YouTube. It's just that simple. So share the video. All right, let's give you a few examples of how scopes should be applied for different use cases, for different scenarios. First scenario we're going to talk about is hunting deer inside 200 yards, so 200 yards max. What do you need here? Well, you just need a basic scope. I would recommend some variable power. However, don't get crazy on the magnification. You just don't need to be crazy on the magnification. At the most, you're going to need 9 power, maybe 10. If you get a scope that's like 3 to 12, that's fine, and you like the price and you like the scope, go ahead and buy it. It's not going to hurt you. But for the most part, the closer in you get, you're going to want a lower magnification. In fact, if you can find a 2 power on the bottom end to like maybe 10 or something like that, or 8, a 2 to 8 would be ideal, frankly. Don't get crazy on objective size. 40, 44 millimeter, somewhere like that is about the most you need. You can even do like an LPVO, a low power variable optic, especially if you're hunting these deer with an AR platform. That would be superb. And you could go to like a 1 to 6 or a 1 to 8. Fantastic choice for you. Just be careful. Some of those LPVOs, though, they have like half-inch adjustments or half MOA adjustments as opposed to quarter MOA adjustments. So not as precise a rig. So bottom line here, for this situation, you can get away with just a bare bones scope if you need to. If you don't have the bucks, but you can still swing like about $200, $250 or something and get a halfway decent one with a duplex reticle and a halfway decent glass. You're going to set the zero at 100 or 200 yards, and you're going to just leave it anyways. I mean, you're not going to be adjusting this thing. You don't need dial-up prayer wheels, adjustable turrets. You just set them, cap them, let them go. The more you mess with these cheap scopes, the faster you're going to wear them out. So just set them and forget them. Don't change loads. Just keep that scope on the same rifle. Never vary. If you're hand loading, just set it up for the one load and stick with it. Just don't mess with the thing if you can. And then treat the scope very carefully. It's probably not going to be as robust. And don't put it on a hard kicking gun. But you don't need a hard kicking gun for deer at 200 yards. Let's be honest with you. So that's where that would work out well. Now, if you can spend a little more and go to that $300 to $500 range, you're going to be golden, really. You are. And you're going to have a good scope that if you get a 250 or 300 yard shot for whatever reason and you got to make it, you're going to be a lot better off with that better scope than you will with the cheapie. Having said that, I actually have to admit, I made the longest shot I've ever made on a game animal, which was out to about 320 yards with a really basic scope. Next use case, 500 yard shot at an elk. Well, first of all, you got a bigger target area, so that's a help, but it's way out there. 500 yards is a long poke. Yeah, you long range, ultra long range shooters, you're hurting yourself laughing right now, but for the average hunter, this is a heck of a shot. So what kind of scope do you want for this? I would strongly recommend that you get a scope with a first focal plane system. That's going to make sure that the subtensions stay constant, and that's the you know, the measurement on the reticle and the little dots and stuff, how, you know, how far out, like at 100 yards, is each dot worth, you know, a couple mils or a couple MOA or whatever it is. The first focal plane will keep that consistent for you, so you don't have to refigure anything in your head or anything, or ask yourself what power am I on or whatever. You can just set where you need to be, and the subtensions are the same no matter what. Really useful. Until I got into one, I really didn't think they were all that necessary, but now that I have one for longer shots, indispensable. So get a first focal plane. That's going to be probably close to $1,000 at least for a scope. And then get good glass. You definitely want that good glass, especially in the low light conditions. And illuminated reticle, again, especially for these precision shots. Wow, what a game changer. Just you know, yeah, the cliche is like night and day, but it literally is like night and day. It's a fantastic step up. So get that illuminated reticle. And then if you can get turrets, if you want to dial your drops, that's not a bad idea. Once you get past about 300-400 yards, it becomes very useful. Do you need a wind turret? Maybe, but if the scope has got a nice reticle with nice wind holds on it, I don't think it's that critical. But if you're somebody that wants to dial, then yeah, you're going to need those turrets. And to be honest with you, you're going to be well beyond $1,000 at that point to get a good scope. There's a couple scopes, like I said, out there that are, quote, tactical or precision. They're in that $500 range, but they don't have zero stops. So they are non-starters, in my opinion. Now, our third use case is going to be hunting bear in heavy cover, in the timber, as you were, depending on where you're at. You call it the woods if you're back east, and the timber if you're out west. But you're hunting those bear in the timber, in the thick stuff. Maybe Alaska. That's, you know, there's a lot of brush in Alaska, to say the least. So what do we need for that? Well, to be honest with you, you don't need a super stupendous scope. I would definitely get an illuminated reticle. Okay. You don't need a lot of power, though. In fact, I would say your best bet would be an LPVO with an illuminated reticle. Something like a 1:6, no more than a 1:8. That's all you need. Do you need first focal plane? Absolutely not. So we're talking maybe $500 to maybe $1,000, but probably significantly less than $1,000 to get a decent scope. Or you can run just a regular duplex scope. A 3:9 would be fine. I would like less magnification in case I have to go find one of these critters that's been hit in the dark, you know, in the timber, in the thick stuff. Then you might want a much wider field of view. But something you could do if you wanted to is you could put a little red dot on top of or off to the side or whatever on that higher powered scope. So if you have to go in for a really close shot, you've got that red dot to back you up. And that wouldn't be a bad way to go either. Or heck, if it's really close, like inside 50 yards, you're hunting over bait or something, just put a regular red dot on that thing, either a little RMR type deal or a tube type red dot. And you don't need any magnification at all for that. So that's where I would go with that. And again, to get a decent one, $300 to $500 at least. And you're probably going to have to go, to be honest with you, to get a really good setup, $500 to $1,000. So it's going to be up to you, you know, how much you want to spend on this sort of thing. But I wouldn't go below on this bear type thing, on this bear situation. I wouldn't go below $300, and I probably wouldn't even go below $500 if I had my choice. But there you go. Well then, if you're an average hunter of average means, what scope should you use? How much should you be paying on this? Well, frankly, I think you should be in that $300 to $500 range. And you don't need to go super fancy on this. Depends again on what your animals you're hunting and the ranges you intend to hunt. I would buy a scope from a major name brand. Check out their warranty. You're going to get a decent warranty. You should get a pretty decent product for the money. You're going to get decent glass, and you don't need to go crazy on the magnification. So a 3:9 by 40 in that $300 to $500 range for most hunters, I think will do just nicely. You're going to get decent glass, good light transmission in low light. Now, is it going to be the best thing ever? No. And should you be spending twice the price of the rifle? Probably, so if you really want to do this right. But to be honest with you, if you've got limited means and you just need a decent scope, if you spend in that range and you get it from a major manufacturer with the features you like on it, and I would try to get a 30mm tube, frankly, these days they're so common. Stay away from the 1-inch tubes. Get a 30mm tube and you should be just fine. With an illuminated reticle if you can do it. But that's what I would recommend. What do you think the best scope for the money is? We'd love to hear from you. Go down in the comments there and tell us your scope story, what you would recommend, what you've used, and how well you've liked it, or how much you didn't like it. We all will learn by you sharing your comments with us. And thank you for spending your valuable time here with us at the LocaCarnivore today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you got some useful information today. And always, I like to remind everybody, insist upon facts. And you know the big fact that we all need to insist upon every single day? You know it. Han shot first. Thanks for watching.